Okay, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for this vaccine panel. Hi. I'm going to open in a quick prayer, and then I will explain the order of the panel and how this will move forward. Once again, we are recording. So if you are comfortable with your camera on, you are definitely more than welcome. If you don't want to, that's entirely up to you. So please bow your heads in a prayer with me. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for this day. Thank you for waking us up. And we pray that you will just have your way this evening, Lord. We know that you do not want us to be in the dark. You want us to seek wisdom, seek knowledge, seek understanding. So we pray that we will just be able to do that this evening, be able to understand more and be able to just be enlightened by it and be able to feel confident in the decisions that we make based on facts that we learn. We thank you this evening and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So this evening we will have 4 panelists. It will first be our master biology teacher, brother Samuel Washington Jr. And then it will be our very own Pastor Debra E. Morris, who is also a retired perioperative nurse. And then it will be myself, Minister Destiny Collazo. I'm an assistant research technician in the pulmonary division at NYU. And our special guest panelist this evening is Dr. Adjoa Smalls-Mantey. She has a PhD in immunology, and she also has over 10 years of experience working on a research for an HIV vaccine. So once again, we thank you so much, all of our panelists, for joining us. Each panelist will speak for about 5 to 7 minutes just to give some information, and then we will open the floor for questions. We also received some questions ahead of time as well. We will address all of those. So once again, thank you. And we will begin with our brother Samuel Washington. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Minister Collazo, for doing this. Because a lot of people generally have questions, and it's okay, it's fine, because this is a scary time because we're in this time period that we've never been in before. So why not have them? Better to have questions and to seek the answers to the questions so you could be more informed. Than to just let fear, run you and keep you indoors forever until you feel that it's safe to come outside. So my question, well, the thing I'm supposed to address is, what is mRNA? And that's fascinating because a lot of people ask them, well, what is this mRNA vaccine? What's the difference in the vaccine and vaccine? So we'll just start with the basics. To understand mRNA, we have to just we'll take a pretty blanket look at genetics. So generally when people think of genetics, they go, oh, okay, it's heredity. Why do I look like somebody else? And from a scientific perspective, genetics, it does deal with the genes, but we're really looking at the expression of proteins. Okay, so all living things express proteins, and we call that physical appearance. We call it a phenotype, but let's just say for now, we're just looking at things. So everything living has proteins, and proteins are based on just a sequence of amino acids. So when we say this genetic code is universal, all living things recognize these 20 amino acids, and that's how proteins are built. So when we say our genes, our DNA becomes this master blueprint of the types of proteins you make, right? So you look like your parents because you make similar types of proteins they do. So they passed on their genetics to you. And so you end up making the types of proteins they do. So you resemble them. Well, DNA has all of your information, but you don't have to make all of your proteins at one time, right? So in order to make a specific protein, you need something called mRNA, messenger RNA. So that one mRNA becomes just the information for a specific type of protein that you want to make. Okay, so at any given time, your body's making specific different proteins. It could be insulin, it could be hemoglobin or whatever. So you have these mRNAs that are really just the instructions for making specific types of proteins. That mRNA takes that instruction from your DNA and it brings it to the part of your cell that's going to make your protein, which is your ribosome. Okay, so in a nutshell, mRNA is just that. mRNA becomes just a mini set of instructions for creating one type of protein that you specifically need at that time. So that's generally what mRNA is, just a blueprint for making a protein.
Thank you so much, Brother Sam. That was very explanatory, very detailed, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we will have our Pastor Morris discussing vaccines in general and the importance of them. You're on mute, Pastor. You're still on mute. Are you having difficulty?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let me see if I could get my document back up. Okay, perfect. My assignment with what I was saying, we do thank you, Minister Destiny, for having this forum. I think it's very good information, and it's important because many people have been vaccinated already, but there are many people that have not and are still having many questions in reference to, is it the vaccine's important and is it safe? And that's my assignment for today. The importance and safety of the vaccine. So really, we thank you, Brother Sam, for that wonderful explanation in reference to the mRNA. Okay, so vaccines are really a simple and safe and effective way of protecting people against harmful diseases before they come into contact with them. It uses your body's natural defenses to build resistance to specific infections and makes your immune system stronger. So those who are on just food for thought, I have a couple of questions. How many of you have been vaccinated as a child? Okay. How many of you, if you have children, have had your infants and your children vaccinated? Okay, and traveling to other countries, if you have, how many of you have been vaccinated prior to your travels? Because this was something that was necessary for you to leave this country to go to another country, not to become infected with quote unquote a disease that may be prevalent, and then bring it back to your home state or your home country. So I know there are people that travel, and one thing I do know about that, they cannot wait to be vaccinated. And when they get vaccinated, they know they're ready for their travel. So we already said that the vaccination is a safe and effective way of protecting you, but it's also safe and effective way to prevent diseases and to save life now more than ever, especially with COVID-19. And I just really thank Brother Sam for his information in reference to the mRNA. And today vaccines are available to protect against at least, they say, 20 diseases. And we know diphtheria, we know tetanus, we know pertussis, we know influenza, measles, meningitis, pneumonia, polio, and there's so many others. So just as Americans, we could say that we have had these vaccinations. And it's very interesting, even tetanus is included in it. And just think about the the Industrial Revolution, when people really, really were getting cut horribly in with the machinery and whatnot, and they found out that they could do a vaccine. And the important issues of vaccine, we said it's preventing diseases or it's preventing serious illnesses or disabilities from the diseases. And we know tetanus can cause extreme pain, muscle spasm, lockjaw, blood clots, and even blindness. And people don't even understand that sometimes. And as soon as you go to the doctor, you said, I was cut by something. you're going to receive that vaccine even as adults. And when we look at even measles, measles could cause encephalitis, which is the infection of the brain. So, we as Americans are used to taking vaccines. Um, Without vaccines, we are in risk of serious illnesses and disabilities. And some people, they do have allergies. Some people are prevented from taking these vaccines, but there are many who are unable to take the vaccines. So they're really depending on what they would call even the herd immunity. The people that are able to, they're depending on us to ensure not only their safety, but our personal safety, but also their safety. So it's really a vaccine that even prevents diseases from spreading. And they said there's about 3 million people every year that are saved from serious illness or disabilities just by having a vaccine. Remember, you are far more likely to be seriously injured by a vaccine preventable disease than by the vaccine, okay? So we have to really remember that many vaccine preventable diseases can result in death. And we know that, and that's why when polio and tetanus and even pneumonia came out, the influenza, 1918, the vaccines were so necessary. And we now are living in a COVID environment that we know the vaccine was very necessary. The benefits of the vaccine greatly outweigh the risks, and many more illnesses and death would occur without vaccine. We've seen with the COVID-19, 500,000 plus people have already died. But if I'm not mistaken, there's 27 million people that have obtained the disease. So we know the percentage is low, but if the vaccine can help prevent these deaths, 500,000 people, why not? And that's just in the United States alone. The vaccines help train our immune system to create these antibodies, just as it does when it's exposed to the disease. So therefore, it helps weakens it. And what Brother Sam really spoke on was excellent in reference to the messenger RNA. But they help prevent the disease and the risk and the complications of the diseases. Most vaccines are given by injections, and we know, but they can be given other ways. Remember, when you get vaccinated, this is why it's so important. We aren't just protecting ourselves, but those around us. Those who are seriously ill, as we already spoke about, those who are advised not to get certain vaccines, they really are depending on you and I to get vaccinated and to help reduce the spread of the disease, and to ensure that they are safe from the vaccine preventable diseases, and that the host, that the infection, the virus, I'm sorry, that the virus cannot find a host just to lie in and to grow in and to sicken each and every one of us. There was some statistics, and I'm going to hurry up. There was some statistics in reference to COVID-19 as well. And we already know that there's like 27 million people that have obtained it, 500,000 that have died actually from it plus. And they were saying with the deaths, they did receive 2,216 quote unquote deaths that were related to COVID-19, which is still a very, very small amount percentage-wise. But when they did their research with the autopsies and also with medical records and the patient's diseases, actually they came up as we speak today with 0 deaths related to COVID-19, specifically from the injection, from the vaccine of the COVID-19. So I thought that was very interesting because we have heard that there are deaths, but research, and that's why research is so important for people to take that time to really delve into a situation. Another thing why it's important, I wanted to mention this. They were saying also with the COVID-19 pandemic, many people were not getting vaccinated, especially the babies, et cetera, and even the elderly with, the pneumonia and the shingles. So we do encourage you, now that the pandemic and people are becoming vaccinated, please go get your vaccination, because we don't want another outbreak of another virus or a disease. And basically, I want to say they are safe. The side effects are very minor and they're temporary. You will maybe have a sore arm, you may experience a fever, etc. But it's for a very short time, usually for 2 to 3 days. Any licensed vaccine is rigorously tested, so you need to know that. They do go through trials and of their testing, I should say phases of trials for their testing, even before they are approved. There are usually about 3 phases that they do go through. The World Health Organization, they also are very concerned about the safety and efficacy of any vaccine and or any medicine that is produced and given in the United States of America, and actually globally, because it's the World Health Organization. But they also do have other agencies that will review it. And not only those agencies, there are some very independent agencies that will review. So before, and they review it for the safety and the efficacy of the medication as well. So there's a lot that goes on prior to the vaccine even coming to being injected into your body and approved even by the FDA. And I do know, and I'll close with this, is that there were many concerns in reference to COVID-19 vaccination because of the political interference that was made. If we left it up to the scientists, the doctors, the nurses, etc., they would do their job very effectively. So let's not, think about the hype. Let's think about the science behind what the vaccine is all about and the protocol that is being followed each and every time something comes out. People could say certain things, but get your data, do your research, and you will find out even for yourself that it is safe. It would not be on the market without having the proper approval. And the question that I asked prior in reference to vaccination, I am hoping that you could evaluate the vaccinations that you've already had as well, and also compare it to our COVID-19 vaccine. It is safe and it is effective. It does have its efficacy. And hopefully and prayerfully, everybody that is listening, if you have not already taken it, I would advise you that it is safe enough to go forth and take your vaccine, and let's get to our norm again. Whatever the new norm is, it may not be the normal, but at least it's the new norm. God bless you, and I hope you learned something from that.
Thank you so much, Pastor. So for my portion, I'm going to kind of pull together what Brother Sam and what Pastor Morris said, just in reference specifically to the COVID vaccine. So Brother Sam was explaining about mRNA and that it's what you physically see. So for those who have seen any pictures about coronavirus, you see kind of this ball with all of these spikes on it. And what the vaccine does, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, those are mRNA vaccines, and they get just the instructions to create just the spike that's on the coronavirus. So it's not the instructions for the entire virus. It's not parts of the virus or dead parts of the virus. It's just, and it's not even part of the virus in the sense of that it's the spike protein of the virus. It's just the instructions to create that spike protein. So essentially what it does is it gives those instructions to your body, and a few of the cells inside of your body sees those instructions and they say, hey, let's make this. So they make it, they present it on the outside of their cells, and then your body's immune system recognizes that's not part of the body. And it immediately starts creating these defenses that Pastor Morris was talking about against that spike protein. So essentially what it's doing is, you can think of it like the police force of an area going into different stores and handing a picture of someone that has been robbing stores lately. And that what that does is that tells the owners of these stores, look out for someone that looks like this, because it could be a thief. And that's what your body does, is it sees this spike protein and it starts creating an immediate response and what's called an adaptive response. So there's the immediate response, which is what people call the side effects. They're not necessarily side effects, they're the intended effect, because it shows that your immune system is responding to in the way that it's supposed to respond. And what that means is, when you get a virus inside of you, your body does these different things to try and get rid of the virus. It's not specific to the virus that you've received, but it's just, it raises your body temperature to try and kill the virus with heat. It directs your energy towards killing it, so you might feel weak. So getting a fever, feeling tired, things like that, those are your immune system responding appropriately to the components of the vaccine. And then the long-term effect of it, which is what we want, the adaptive response, is when your body creates antibodies against it. So it essentially creates its own little special force for this specific virus or part of the virus. So that if your body comes into contact with the actual coronavirus, it's not necessarily that it says, hey, this is COVID-19, let's go kill it. It's that it sees that spike protein that it already knows is not part of the body. And it says, hey, we already have people ready to attack this because we know that it's not supposed to be here. So that's the effect that you want when you get a vaccine. And that's how all vaccines work, not necessarily mRNA vaccines. mRNA vaccines, like the Pfizer and the Moderna, that's using the instructions. There are many different types of vaccines. They don't all use mRNA, but that's why we were explaining it, because mRNA vaccines is something that is recently coming up. So we will go more into the questions that were sent to us, but our guest panelist, Dr. Smalls, will be our final speaker. And then after she speaks, then we will begin with answering the questions.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk with you about how the vaccine was developed, because I think for a lot of people, and even myself, when I heard that they might have a vaccine in a year, I thought, wow, that's really fast. We haven't had any other vaccine made that fast. Maybe 4 years was the fastest. So, but once I began to understand how they were doing that with the coronavirus vaccine, I was like, okay, all of that makes sense, even based on my own experience.
Right.
So, I just want to go through that a little bit more with you. The first thing I'll mention is that coronavirus first came around back in 2003. That's when, we're calling this coronavirus 2, but there was coronavirus 1, SARS coronavirus 1. And that was happening when I was finishing high school, going into college. And I remember how scary that was. But because of that and some of the other infectious diseases that were happening at that time, the anthrax outbreak, I wanted to get into vaccine research. So basically, we've had coronavirus for almost 18 years now. And since that first epidemic happened, we have been researching how can we fight the coronavirus. So it's not that we've only been researching this for a year, it's more so for 18, 19 years. And then another thing to remember is that the technology has rapidly developed even over the past 5 to 10 years. I think about how I used to do experiments using my hand and pipetting, but now you can have machines that do 20, 30 times the amount of work that I was able to do. So technology allows us to do research a lot faster than was possible. It used to take years to sequence genomes. They got the genome for the coronavirus in one night. And then they were able to share that very rapidly with scientists all around the world. And another, one of the big reasons why we do have a vaccine so quickly is because so many people's heads were thinking about this problem. Usually you have, a couple of groups here, a couple of groups there. But when coronavirus came back, all the governments, from around the world really galvanized their resources, their money, people to say, hey, even if you're working on HIV, I want you to research this. So my old research groups and people I used to work with, even though they're HIV researchers, started working on this. People that were working on the flu started working on this. And again, people were already researching the coronavirus for many years. The Moderna vaccine we know was developed in partnership with the NIH, and the lead scientist is a Black woman named Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. And that is somebody that I went to college with, and she's been working on this for a very, very long time. And I know that she is amazing, brilliant, does very good work, but people have been preparing for this eventuality to happen. Another reason why we were able to get the vaccine so quickly was because of how the testing was done and how the manufacturing was done. Typically, when you do a vaccine trial, there are 3 stages. Like was already explained before. The first stage, you're looking for safety. The second stage, you're looking for, are we getting the correct immune response? And then in the third stage, you're looking to make sure that it really is having a protective effect on the population. So when each of these stages are typically about 2 months, and then you can move on to the next. And sometimes in the past, you've done a lot of research, you get your people enrolled, then you're getting all the data, then you sit down and you start to review it. But what was happening with these vaccine trials is that they were reviewing the data in real time, like every single week, not waiting for 2 or 3 weeks or 2 months after a phase was done. They were right on top of it. So as soon as the last data came in after 2 months, you're able to analyze it, make sure it's safe and it did what it was supposed to do, and then move quickly on to the second stage of the vaccine or the third stage of the vaccine. And they also enrolled a lot of people, typically more than is normally enrolled in clinical trials in these, and you had many clinical trial sites. When it comes to manufacturing, I think this is where we really have where the speed comes in. The federal government said, and probably lots of other governments in other countries, but I know in the US, the federal government said to some manufacturers like Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna that we will fund you to start manufacturing the vaccines now from day one, even as you are just starting your clinical trials, because when we know it's okay, we want to be able to run with it and distribute it. That does not happen normally because that is a huge financial risk for companies to take to start making something and you don't know if it even works. But because they wouldn't have to bear the financial burden, they were able to do that. And there was, again, a lot of evidence that these vaccines would likely work because there are other vaccines, they have been working on vaccines like this in the past, especially the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine. They've been working on vaccines and those have already been approved that work in the same manner. So they're like, we have a pretty good hunch this is going to work. So when the vaccine was authorized by the FDA, within 2 days, they were shipped out and in people's arms. That typically doesn't happen. You're waiting another couple of months for it to be manufactured. So that's where the money comes into play with, and all the funding from all the government and research organizations around the world to allowing us to have the vaccine ready immediately when we needed it. And for now, I'll stop right there. And then I think we have a couple of questions related more so to the vaccine.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much. So you are welcome to place any questions in the chat. I do also have some questions that were sent to me ahead of time. So the first question, Pastor Morris did touch on it a lot, but if she wants to elaborate any further, was what negative effects can any vaccine cause, and do they outweigh the benefits of getting vaccinated?
Okay, okay. The negative effects are usually called side effects, and the side effects and or the natural reaction to a vaccine will definitely occur. Well, I would say will occur, and it's a large percentage. I don't want to give a percentage right now because I don't know it offhand, but it is a good thing when you do have the, when you do feel as if you have a slight fever after the vaccine, if you have a slight headache, even with the babies. I don't know those who have babies, as soon as your child gets a vaccination, the doctor will say, make sure you give them some Tylenol or aspirin and just let them rest for the 24 hours because they know there'll be a side effect, tiredness, crankiness, whatever it may be. That is it's a side effect, but yet it's what the vaccine is supposed to do. And it is fighting, as Minister Destiny has stated, those proteins, they're fighting and they're building up your immune system. So the benefits definitely outweigh the any of the side effects. I did state already that they did receive 2,216 quote, and I'm going to say quote unquote, reports of death due to the coronavirus. And after all the research that was done, and I stated in the autopsy and the medical records, family history, their personal medical history, they found out that actually it was 0% caused by the vaccine itself. So what I would definitely say, if you have any questions in reference to, can I take the vaccine because of allergies, maybe for some other comorbidities, I would definitely suggest that you speak to your doctor first, get their approval, they're okay, and then take the vaccine.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pastor. Our next question says, there is more than one vaccine. How do I know which one to get? So are there any of our panelists that would like to answer that one?
I mean, the easiest response to that is get the one that's available to you. All of them are very effective, and that's what research has shown. That's what Pastor Morris was just saying. So especially at this time where there's either an age restriction or you're an essential worker or whatever. And when your time comes, just get the vaccine. Whatever one is available to you, get it, because that's just going to help in generating this herd immunity. That's going to help us all.
Wonderful, thank you. And just to add to that, a lot of people have been bringing up this herd immunity, and just to be aware of it, herd immunity means at least 75% of people have been vaccinated. So that means when you're speaking to people, and for every 4 people that you ask, 3 of them say, yes, I'm vaccinated. And that's something that will take a lot of time for us to get to. But if everyone has this mentality of, oh, I'll just let everyone else get it, most people are having that mentality right now. So unfortunately, we won't achieve that herd immunity if most people choose to lean on herd immunity. It's not going to happen.
Minister Destiny, I don't know
Yes.
if Dr. Smalls would like to say anything, but what I wanted to also say is in reference to the vaccine, they may come up and they may say one vaccine, it has less percentage in reference to keeping the virus from you, but the main point that needs to be made is that the vaccines that we have today, the 3 in particular that are here in the United States, they keep you from the serious illness and or dying from the disease. And that's what's so very important at this very time. So as Brother Sam said, make sure you get it. It doesn't matter. Let's get the herd immunity, and let's go forth with our lives as much as possible.
I agree with everything that you all said. Again, all the vaccines are 100% effective in preventing death from COVID, and hospitalization as well. And that's the endpoint. That's what you want for and expect from all vaccines. So some might be 85% effective from preventing like really serious illness. Others might look like 95%, but that's still really good for any regular vaccine. The flu vaccine is either 20 to 80% effective, typically about 50% effective in a regular year, and we still take that regularly. And all that was needed to be cleared by the FDA was 50% efficacy, but these work so much better. So you'll do okay with anything. And right now, the CDC is not like there's no contraindication for getting the vaccine, except if you've had a bad allergic reaction to the vaccine or its components. And for people and they're saying, even if you have allergies like to nuts, like I do, that's okay. You can get it because I know I'm not allergic to other types of medications and things like that. But even if you are, at the vaccine site, they have EpiPens that are used for immediate allergic reactions. They watch you for 15 minutes after to make sure that if you have a bad reaction, it can be treated. And for all the people that have had it, which isn't a lot, it's a couple out of a million, nobody has died. And that's the important thing to remember. People have allergic reactions all the time. 1 in 50 Americans experiences anaphylaxis at some point in their life. So it's something that happens a lot with medications, more so with foods that we all commonly eat. But I think it's important to remember that there are ways to treat you effectively if you should have a bad reaction. And right now, the Pfizer vaccine is indicated for people that are as young as 16. So I would just say if you are a teenager in that small window, that is the way that you can get the vaccine. The only people that can't get the vaccine now or can't get any vaccine now are people that are 15 and younger because it has not been authorized by the FDA. But for everyone 16 and older, you can get it. No clear restrictions. If there are any questions, that's on a case-by-case basis.
And that's just I just want to piggyback, and that's the importance of building up. And I don't know if people were listening when we were talking about this herd immunity. The herd immunity, it protects us as a group, especially those that can't, like people that are underage or for whatever reason cannot get the vaccine. And that's it. The more people that are immunized, okay, the greater the protection to us as a group, because the vaccine because the virus has less hosts that it can bounce around to. So that's the importance, like you said, of just going out and getting that vaccine again, and recognize the facts. And that's there are people that have had the vaccine and died, but there have been zero evidence that the vaccine has caused the death. So be careful about what's called this bait clickbait on different social medias or whatever. It's get your facts together.
Exactly. Thank you all so much. And just as Dr. Smalls had said, The vaccines are 100% in preventing death, and that is the end game. We don't want people to die from the virus, and don't want people to become critically ill from it, and that's exactly what the vaccine prevents. Our next question is: we all keep hearing about variants of the virus. If everyone got vaccinated, would the variants stop? So I can just start with that one. And the short answer is we can't necessarily guarantee it because we don't have all of the information for it. But idealistically speaking, if everyone got vaccinated, then it should not be as much of a problem, because again, the point of this vaccine is that it helps your body to recognize it. So unless these variants are significantly different looking, essentially, the vaccine should still be effective towards it. And what is occurring right now is there are a lot of trials where Pfizer and Moderna, I believe, are testing to see if the vaccine is effective against the variants. But again, the goal is to prevent critical illness and to prevent death. And these vaccines have prevented that. There have been no cases of deaths due to the vaccine. And even people who receive the virus after they have been vaccinated, they don't become critically ill and they don't die. So that is again, the goal.
Dr. Smalls, I don't know if you wanted to say anything, but here I go again. Also, in reference to variants, viruses have variances. And that's something that's very common with viruses. I mean, the flu, if we think about the flu vaccine that you get, the flu shot, they call it every year. They structure it so that it does cover the variances that do come, the new strands that are coming. So this, I'm sure, I mean, it's still a new disease and we do already know variances are going on. So they will adapt the vaccine to the variances. Are there variances that, may be more difficult than others? Absolutely. And we just have to really depend on the scientists and all those with the knowledge to help produce what is necessary for the vaccine.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully we'll have less variants coming around, but they're already there. At this point, they're starting to get away from us. We're trying to keep up with the vaccination, but if we didn't have vaccines now, I don't know where we would be. So we are definitely trying to keep up with them, but they're already out there, and viruses, their whole purpose is to adapt and figure out a way to survive. So that's what they do. And like Pastor Debra mentioned, that there's the flu has a lot of variants. HIV, the reason why we don't have a great vaccine is because it mutates so much, so quickly. Like we haven't been able to get a good target, but at least with this is early in the infection cycle. We're able to try to nip it in the bud as best as we can, but they might still be around there. So we're looking into what we might have to do, like with a booster shot, to address those.
Yeah, and that's all. And I was just going to say too, the simple answer is yes, there are going to be variants. So the simple answer is vaccines are not going to stop variants, but which is also something that really hasn't been brought up today. But this is why we got to continue to do our habits. So besides getting the vaccine, you want to continue to do the things that we've been doing all along: the social distancing, the wearing the mask, all these other things, can prevent a bunch of stuff, not just SARS-CoV-2. It's gonna we have to just learn. So earlier in this production, someone said whatever that new normal may be, we definitely aren't going to go back, or we shouldn't at least, to go back to over a year ago. We've learned too much now, so we can move forward, and we may have what's called a new normal, but definitely don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to learn and move forward and practice strategies that help us together as a society, in general, against these pathogens.
Yes, thank you all so much. We are starting to get some questions in the chat as well. One of the questions that I received was, how do you know that you were given the vaccine if you did not have any side effects?
Some people don't have side effects, and I think almost everyone experiences a sore arm, but for me, that was the only side effect I have. And I saw them draw it out of the bottle, like, you see the vials there. So I knew I was getting, that's how I knew I got the vaccine. But for me, I just had a sore arm, and I usually don't get very sick when I get vaccines. Um, but I trust that they were drawing from the correct bottle.
Yes, and just as Dr. Small said, everyone reacts differently. Everyone's body is different, even for receiving the actual virus. When people get sick with it, everybody has such a wide range of responses to it. But if you are very skeptical and you do want to get it checked, you can get an antibody test. And just to get checked, I would advise at least a couple of weeks after you receive the vaccine, just to make sure that the antibodies have had enough time to build up for the test to read it. So if you get an antibody test, if you run to the doctor for the antibody test right after you get the vaccine, you probably won't see any antibodies on it.
Right. And can I just add to that?
Yes.
It's also called integrity of the profession. And hopefully and prayerfully that there is no one trying to give you something that is not what they're saying that they're giving you. And everyone also should have gotten a card stating that you received this vaccine, so that, I mean, they could write what they want, but I'll say again, the integrity of the profession should really take place, and hopefully you can trust the integrity as well.
Yeah, a lot of people have that question, and again, and it's really because, well, I believe it's because some people, especially in the early onset of getting the vaccine, there were very limited people who could get the vaccine. So some people were opting to do the trials, and there's a difference in the testing phase of vaccine or the trials and you signing up for an actual vaccine. So, and so people are saying, well, if I'm doing a trial, I may get the placebo, I may not, or whatever. Yeah, that's kind of different than where we're at right now. There's so many people right now that are eligible for the vaccine. It's just like Pastor Moore said, if you're signing up for the vaccine, then you get the vaccine. You're not per se in any, again, because people are, and again, people have their own reasons for this, but very suspicious when it comes to getting vaccines and getting things, and it's just something that we have to deal with. So right now, right, I'm going back to integrity, the science, and right, if you're signing up for, at this point in time, you're signing up to get the vaccine, and you're at a state-run site or a pop-up or whatever, they should be giving you the actual vaccine from that child, and they'll tell you which one it is as well if you're curious to know which one you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, there are, I would say make sure you're going to a trusted site, state-run pharmacies right now. Some medical clinics and doctors' offices are starting to get it. But if you have any doubts, if someone's starting to reach out to you, saying, hey, I can give this to you, it looks suspicious, that might happen. We don't have any examples of that happening yet in America. But if you go to a state-run site, you can trust that that's what people are giving you, or your doctor's office where you typically go and get your medical care, the pharmacies. I trust the integrity of my fellow healthcare workers.
I agree. Our next question was, do vaccines change your DNA?
So that comes up a lot because people are hearing this mRNA, is it mRNA, so looking at the biochemistry of it, so there's this nucleic acid, right? So you have two basic types of nucleic acid, DNA and RNA. So people get, oh my gosh, it's an mRNA back there. They're going to mutate my DNA somehow, and that's going to protect me from whatever pathogen I'm trying to be protected from. No, so in this case, remember, when you're getting an mRNA vaccine, we're just using that mRNA strand to code for the protein. So remember, if you were here from the beginning of our presentation, mRNA is a set of instructions. So again, all living things recognize these 20 amino acids. So we build proteins by putting together these amino acids. So, but I need a code. I need to know. It's just like letters in the alphabet. You know, cat is CAT. You know, there are 26 letters in the alphabet, but you know, depending on how I put them together, it's going to read a certain way. So if I have, you know, tar, it's TAR. If I flip it around, it's rat. Well, rat is not tar. It's how I'm putting it together. You know, it's the same thing with these amino acids. You know, I need a specific way of putting these amino acids together in order to get the protein that I want. So our mRNA sequence are those directions. They're going to be the specific directions to make this protein. So in most of these vaccines that we're talking about now, we're giving you this mRNA so your body can read the instructions on how to make the protein, specifically the protein of the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2, what we're calling this particular coronavirus, because those particular spike proteins help the virus get into your cells. So if our bodies can make that spike protein, it can recognize it, and that should be enough. And again, you know, to help kind of tune up our immune system to recognize it, build up these memory cells to recognize it whenever we get it. So the simple answer is no. These vaccines, these mRNA vaccines, are not altering your DNA. And again, Dr. Small, because she's been around a lot of work with HIV, because some people say, well, doesn't HIV get into your system and stay in your DNA? Well, that's, you know, HIV works a little bit different. But that's the simple answer is no, it does not alter your DNA.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on that as well, again, this is just, it's not even the part of the virus, it's the instructions to create that part. And also it's the instructions just to create this one part. So the vaccine is not going to, your body does not have the capabilities to look at these instructions and say, oh, this is from COVID-19, let me build this actual virus. It physically cannot do that. And it's not something that can get into your DNA to change anything about your genetic code. It simply does not have the tools, very simply. It doesn't have the tools to be able to do that. Another question that we received is that—
Something I'll also mention is that the mRNA quickly degrades in your body within a few hours after it provides the instructions. So that's why they actually have to be kept at very, very cold temperatures to keep it from degrading in transport and storage. So it does not stay around in your body. And even the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it's adenovirus vector vaccine with DNA. We didn't talk about it too much, but even though it's a DNA, it does not go into your DNA. It cannot do that. It does not have all those components like other real, true viruses do. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is quickly made into mRNA, just like the mRNA vaccines. It's just one step before.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Smalls. And kind of piggybacking off of mentioning the different vaccines, our next question was that because Moderna and Pfizer are 2 shots and Johnson & Johnson is 1, is it less effective? Just shaking our heads no. No.
Everybody just saying no.
So Dr. Smalls did already mention earlier, the point of the vaccines is that we want to prevent death and serious illness. So if you start getting into all of the details about each vaccine, they do have different ones. Some of them have different percentages of effectiveness for you actually contracting the virus, for you having a moderate case, for you having a severe case. So they have different levels in more detailed areas, but the point of the vaccine in preventing death and serious illness is across the board. That is the goal of the vaccines.
Yeah, be careful looking at those numbers because you really need to know what the numbers represent before you run off and say, "Oh my gosh, this is a terrible vaccine. This only has this number." These numbers represent specific things and time period, population. There's a lot of things going on. So you got when you're comparing vaccines, you got to really compare apples to apples. And that's the one thing that you can compare is their 100%, all of the vaccines out right now, 100% against hospitalization and severe symptoms from the actual coronavirus.
And one of the reasons why some, like maybe the Johnson & Johnson looks to have slightly less efficacy is because that was tested a little bit later when the new variants that are a lot better at infecting us were around. So who knows, they weren't tested at the same time, but even against all these new variants that are really, really good at infecting people, and actually there's some evidence that they might be even deadlier, these vaccines still work very, very well. But at the end of the day, they all prevent death from COVID, which is what you want.
Exactly. We are starting to run a little short on time, so I want to try and get a few more questions in that we have. Our next question, I can kind of put two questions together that we received, is how long does the vaccine last? And as a result, how often would we have to get the vaccine? If it would be annual, like the flu shot, or even in the chat was already asked if we will need to get a booster, etc. So I could start on that.
Okay.
No,
you
can go ahead.
I don't think anybody really knows yet. I remember this is a very, very new virus, even though it has history from 2002, 2003 with the SARS. But as far as how long, they don't know. Boosters are something that they will do only because there are variances out there. So whatever the variances may be, they may also work on the booster and suggest that we do have a booster. But as far as how long, unless, Dr. Smalls, you may also know, at this point in time, nobody really knows. They're working on it though. They're working on it.
Yes, so essentially what we can say is what we have already seen, which is that the earliest vaccine doses were given, I believe, in December. So we can say at this point, because it's been 4 months, that it lasts for at least 4 months. And that the point is that because we have not had this before, as you already know, and has already been said, the flu shot we get once a year, but tetanus shot you get once every 10 years. It's really a matter of time will tell, because this is a very new situation that all of us are in, including the scientists. So we have to, we can't guarantee anything without seeing it first, and we'll only see it as time moves on.
And for vaccine trials, they typically study people for about 2 years after. So the first people got the vaccine in early March last year. And as of now, I have not heard of any of the companies coming out saying that people that were even in the vaccine trials that got the vaccine doses, they have waning immunity right now and they need to get another booster shot after a year. So we're assuming at least for a year it can work, but they are doing studies now in those people that were in the original trials of giving them some of the new booster shots to see how it works. But we're thinking at least a year because at least we have the data on that right now. But the new variants are going to really be the ones that tell, that probably more so dictate how often we have to get a booster shot. If we do.
Yes, if we do. Our next question is, what advice would you give to someone who is skeptical due to the side effects?
The side effects last 24, 48 hours. It's, for people I know that have had the side effects, it's maybe like you had a cold. I mean, we get colds maybe 2-3 times a year. For me, the sore arm is just like what I would experience if I were lifting, a 20-pound weight. I'm a weakling, but like it was just like that. So, and I go to the gym a couple of times a week and still do that to myself. So I figure, I go through days where I'm not feeling as peppy, or I'm tired. I stayed up late, or all night doing something, or trying to work out to look better. And so just 2 days of maybe 1 or 2 days of maybe feeling a little bit down is worth it to me. I know I can prepare for it, as opposed to taking the risk and unfortunately dying from COVID, or more so even having COVID, having really bad long lasting effects from that I have to live with for the next 30, 40, 60 years of my life.
Exactly. And that long lasting is something that I feel a lot of people have not really grasped yet. The effects that we're seeing in people that have had COVID, even if they had a mild case, it can affect you for the rest of your life, physiologically, neurologically. There have been cases of people that their lung capacity they were perfectly healthy before they got COVID, and then they got COVID and their lung capacity has just reduced and it has not gotten back to normal. So there's just so many unknowns and so many very, very severe risks for getting the actual virus. Like Dr. Small said, I would much rather feel tired for one day than risk the potential effects that it could have for the rest of my life. Another question, yes, we are going to be closing. I just wanted to try and see if we can fit in these last questions. Do we have any updates on vaccines for people that are under 16 years old? The question in the chat says, how likely and how soon do you think there will be a vaccine for them, and will it become mandatory for schools? It becoming mandatory, we can't really tell that. That will probably be on a state-by-state basis. But in terms of any information for getting a vaccine for the trials for vaccines for anyone younger, does anyone have?
Trials are ongoing now. They were doing trials for kids that were up to 12. And then this week they started opening up trials for kids that are young as 6 months old. And they're expecting, at least for the kids that are high school, middle school, elementary school age, they might have enough data and it would be authorized by the end of the summer. I would say like middle school and high school age children. So they're anticipating by the beginning of the school year, children should have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. Whether it will be required, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if some school districts did, because a lot of school districts already require that kids have routine vaccinations. Like, it's already done anyway. So this would just be another thing that they add. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because it's already required for everything else.
Yes, it's definitely becoming a part of our new normal. So our last question for the evening, and then we will wrap it up, is what should we do post-vaccine to lessen possible side effects? So I will say just very simply, the same as if you were to get a cold. You can take Tylenol to lessen your fever, take rest, drink plenty of fluids. Just don't strain yourself. Again, the point of the vaccine and the side effects that we hear is, again, the intended effect, which is that your immune system is responding. And the way that your immune system responds, the way we handle that usually with like cold medicine, flu medicine, is to kind of lessen the effect of the fever, lessen the effect of the fatigue, things like that. So plenty of rest, plenty of fluids. You can take certain medications, ibuprofen, Tylenol. It will not affect the effectiveness of the vaccine. It's just, again, to help with the immune response that your body is going through. Anyone want to add anything before we wrap it up?
I don't know if we'll have a chance for closing statements, but
Yes.
Just one other thing I wanted to mention is that I know we're talking a lot about herd immunity, but don't rely on others. I kind of think of it like when you are in a class full of smart people, yeah, you are more likely to maybe do well, but if you did not study for that test, you are not going to pass that test. Everyone has to get the vaccine to protect their own self, to have that guaranteed protective effect. So that's the one thing I would have you remember. And just think of, we do have this opportunity to get the vaccine now, whereas, you know, let's, over 2 million people didn't have that opportunity before the vaccines were authorized. And so I would just seriously consider, we have this opportunity where we didn't have it for a lot of other diseases. And many people died from them, whether it's thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, 1918 flu, or even when HIV first started, and even now. But we do have this, and we have gotten vaccines in the past. For many, most Americans walking around to be in public school, you've had to have it. So it is something that we have experienced before. I definitely understand the hesitancy. Talk to your doctor, but if you have a chance, sign up. You can always reschedule your appointment, move it down the line. But if you have the opportunity, sign up for it, get more information while you're trying to make your decision. But it truly is a miracle and a blessing that we have a vaccine now that works really, really well.
Any other, do any of our panelists want to give any other closing statements? All right. Well, we do hope that
I would
oh,
just
yes.
say, remember, you're not just protecting yourself, but you're protecting everyone else, and especially those who may not be able to obtain it, those that are maybe, have more comorbidities or something that the virus is not, would help them at this point in time. So just remember, we're protecting everyone. As Brother Sam said, please continue to do your social distancing. Listen, your washing of your hands, wearing of your mask. It is so very, very important that we do these things to maintain a safe environment for each and every one of us. And this practice should be forever and ever. You may not have a mask forever, but cleaning your hands and keeping yourself from, sick people, these are things that should be forever. It's just good hygiene practices.
All right. So we do hope that this was very informative and helpful. We hope that you have gained enough information and facts to be able to make a knowledgeable decision rather than making a decision based on hearsay, hype, and fear. So the point is to get the facts. So even after this, if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to me or to any of our panelists or to anyone in the medical field that might have information regarding the vaccines, its safety, and its use. And we thank you so much for joining us. And we hope, again, that something was said to encourage you and make you feel more confident in the decision that you make. So thank you again, and God bless, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Destiny, can I just say thank you for hosting this? And I do want to also thank Dr. Smalls-Mantey also for being with us and giving us that information. And Brother Sam, as well. But God bless you. Thank you so much.
Yes, God bless. And thank you so much, Dr. Smalls, again. Thank you, Brother Sam, and thank you, Pastor, for being our wonderful panelists this evening. So we pray that everyone has a wonderful night and stay safe. God bless.